test my voice. I'll see it's still doing it.
Okay. Today is March the 14th, 2014. Could you please state your full name?
Marsha, Elise, Michael, Bowman.
Is there anything special or unusual about your name or the way you were named?
Sort of. My mother, of course, didn't know if it was going to be a girl or a boy. And she couldn't think of a name, and so she named me after the nurse that she liked most there in the hospital. I was born in Methodist Hospital down in Houston, and her name was Elise. And then later they added the Marsha, so it wasn't originally on my birth certificate.
Okay. When and where were you born?
In Houston, Texas, at Methodist Hospital.
What year?
1938.
So that means you are 76 years old?
75. I'll be 76 in July.
Okay. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
One sister, Janet. She's 8 years younger than I am.
Okay. What were your parents' names, and when and where were they born?
My dad was born in Idaho. His name was Gene Irvin Michael. And my mother was born in Texas, along with almost the entire family on my mother's side. We're Texans from way back.
Okay. When and where did they pass?
They both died in Waco in a retirement home, and about 2 weeks apart. They were actually in the same room together for several months.
What were their occupations?
My dad wanted to be a doctor, but that was during the Depression, so he didn't get to finish college, and he ended up being a butcher in the long run. He always worked at grocery stores, except during World War II, he worked down on the ship channel helping build ships. And they made him a supervisor because he was the only one that had any kind of college experience at all. And so that's where we were during the war.
Did you know your grandparents?
Only my grandmother on my mother's side. Her husband had died long before I was born. And what else did you ask? The other side?
Well, if you knew any of your grandparents, and what can you tell me about them?
My grandmother grew up in the country. She had 9 children. Her husband, I'm not sure when he passed away, but they always lived in the country, went to country schools. But I think she read quite a bit, but what she really loved was when radio started having soap operas, and you didn't want to mess with her during her soap operas. She didn't want to miss a word. And I did spend a lot of time with her even after she moved to town. I would get on a bus, drive to Gatesville, get off on the main road. The driver would let me off. Now I'm talking when I was 8 or 9 years old, 10, along in there. And then I would walk over to her house, and she'd send me to the store for Dr. Peppers, and we would play dominoes.
Okay.
That was an excitement in my life, believe it or not.
No, I imagine. So what can you tell me about your family further back than your grandparents, if anything?
I know that my mother's, it had to be her great-grandfather, was in a Yankee prison camp during the Civil War. I know that about him, and really not too much more. I've never really gone into to that sort of thing.
Okay. Do you know your family history as far as ethnic origin or anything like that? Specifically, any countries or immigrants when the family first immigrated to America?
I think it would have been when all the other people were coming in. I'm just pretty sure that Whitlock was England. And it seems like there was a German element somewhere along the way, but I'm not sure what that is.
Okay.
Oh, I know the other family name was Edwards, and so that's specifically English.
Edwards and Whitlock?
Well, I think the Whitlock too.
Okay. Is anyone in your family well known for anything?
I don't think so. Not that I know of.
All right, well, we're going to switch to early childhood. So I'd like you to think back to the earliest thing you can remember. How old were you, and what was going on?
Well, the very first thing, and I'm pretty sure I was 2.5. And again, my mother was in and out of mental health places. And my grandmother was there, and my Aunt Bill, her name was actually Willarina. And my grandmother had come up there to visit with us, and she had framed a little picture, which I didn't discover until later, was cut out of a magazine, and she had framed it. And on the back, my aunt had written that it was given to me in, I say 1940, right around Christmas. And she handed me the little framed picture of the Mary and Jesus. And I clasped it to my chest and started running around and around the house. They had a house that didn't have a hall, so you could just go round and round and round. And I remember my grandmother going, stop her, she's going to cut herself. And of course I didn't, but it just amazed me to looking at the date that my aunt had written on the back that was under another cover and kind of fell apart. That like I said, I was about 2.5. And that's really, I think, one of I guess maybe it stuck with me because everybody was yelling and hollering and everything. But that really stuck with me. Like I said, my long-term memory is really pretty good.
All right. Where did you live when you were little, and what did your house look like?
Well, we never had a house until we moved to Waco. And we actually moved in with my grandmother, the one that I would go visit. And my mother was expecting my little sister, Janet, and it was a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And then my uncle built my grandmother a house next door to us, and that really helped on the crowding situation. And like I said, I was the only child until I was 7. And my sister was born while we were living there, and I went all the way through elementary school. In fact, all the way through school from first grade in Houston was in Waco. I graduated from Waco High School in 55.
Okay, well, let's talk about your school age then. I'd like you to think back on an incident in grade school, in elementary school, in which you remember very well. What was going on?
I can't remember anything real specific. They put me in 2nd grade when we moved there. I had gone to a parochial school in Houston because it was just a few blocks from the house. It was very, obviously had to be very inexpensive. And so we moved there and went in to go into 2nd grade. They gave us book covers. And they showed us how to do it, and they said, write your name on it. And the teacher came by and she said, you wrote this in cursive. What grade were you in last year? I said, 1st. And she did some other things and had me read, and they weren't teaching phonics then, but I was getting it in that parochial school. So they bumped me up half a grade. And then when we were in 5th grade, they decided to do away with midterm graduations. So they called us the 5 specials, grade 5 specials. And therefore, I got booted up another half year. And so I graduated. I only actually went to school for 11 years instead of 12. And I wouldn't have met your papa if that hadn't happened, because we were in the same English class in high school when he moved to town. And I would never have known him or anything. So you all look like you do because of that. Got genes from both those.
Yeah. How did you spend your summers during grade school?
Oh dear, you could do anything then. I think I got first bicycle when I was still in grade school, and that just gave me all kinds of, what would you say, freedom. And you could go anywhere, do anything. It was so safe back then. And when I got that bicycle, I mean, that really, you just would not believe the miles I rode on that secondhand bicycle that the same aunt that I stayed with so much, they brought it to me. They'd had it fixed up. It wasn't a new bicycle. And it was so strange because before that I wanted one so bad that I would dream that I had one. And in my dreams, I would just be riding that bicycle like crazy. And I would wake up and even look out in the front yard and realize, nope, it was a dream. But I finally got one and just about wore it out.
While you were growing up, did you have any sense of whether your family was rich or poor? And what would you say now about your family's economic situation while you were growing up?
I did not know we were poor until a little girl that I went to school with invited me to her house. And I've seen it since then in Waco, and it was a frame house, but it was very large. It had this huge ballroom with these big glass windows, a little built-in kitchen there. They had a live-in maid. I mean, it was just incredible. I had no idea that anyone, because I knew other people, and everybody mostly had 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and all the kids slept in 1 bedroom. There was no having your own private room, but with her, it was totally different. And that's when I first knew that we were definitely not in the upper class.
Were you happy as a young child?
Yeah, I was. I didn't know the difference, I mean, I knew that other people had cars, and we didn't, but we were right on the bus line. We walked to church. I didn't really think that much of it, at the time. It's just, that's the way it was, and you don't really think that much about it. As I got older, it bothered me a little bit. But I always worked. I sold Christmas cards. I babysat. And then in high school, I got a job at one of the bigger department stores and wrap packages during Christmas and that sort of thing, Always doing something to make money.
You said Christmas cards. What do you mean by that? You would write?
People, you could just go door to door, and again, it was safe to go into anyone's home, and you would show them the samples, and they could tell you how they wanted printed, and you would order them, and they'd ship them to you, and then you'd go deliver them,
Oh, I see.
And I'd make, some pretty good Christmas money. That was before I was even old enough to start babysitting. I was very, very entrepreneurial, I guess. I just like money, mainly.
No. What would you say about your relationship with your parents before high school?
Fine with my dad, but always rocky with my mother. Always. But she couldn't help it. It was just really hard. And she was really partial to my little sister. It bothered me for a long time, but then I realized it was during a time when she wasn't having all those problems. She'd been put on medication then, But she was definitely closer to my sister.
How did that affect you before high school?
It really irritated me, and I couldn't help it. And it was just, the things that they did for her. But it was because they were more able to do it then. But I did sort of resent it. Wasn't her fault, of course.
Right. Well, let's move to high school. Where and in what years did you go to high school? You already mentioned Waco.
We graduated in 55, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it wasn't a midterm graduation. They had, like I said, done away with those. Excuse me.
Is there any incident in high school in which stands out as the most prominent? Most vivid memory?
Oh, the most fun thing, I guess, was in journalism, and I was one of the editors on the paper for I can't forget what the division, I can't remember what the divisions were, but I really enjoyed that, because I kind of did the little humor column with another girl. It was great.